I think a lot of people are like, how do I get my job? How do I make the money? How do I do all these things? And so like, I was like, I'm going to choose where I want to live first. And then I'm going to figure out the money second. And then all the dominoes just kind of started falling. And I've like figured it out. My day-to-day life is a vacation.
Hey, it's Nick, and welcome to 1000 Rounds, the podcast where I explore the stories of solopreneurs who have made the bet on themselves to build a business that serves their life. Every episode, you'll hear all about the lessons they've learned and the uncommon routes they've taken to stand out in a world that is purposefully trying to commoditize them.
My name is Kory Kirby. I'm a publishing strategist where I help experts write and publish books that people actually read.
Dude, I'm excited for this one. I first heard about you and got introduced to you through a mutual friend, Max Trailer, because you've helped him publish, like write and publish his books. And those are some of my favorite reads because they're like just short and pithy. And I enjoy his writing style. And so I got introduced to you and your work. And I'm fascinated by what you've been doing because one, I have not met very many people who are in your line of work. It's very crowded. It's very hard to do something different. You're in a very different line of work than most solopreneurs I talk with, but you've also been at it for a really long time. You've been at it for like 7 years. And so I want to start like, what did you know 7 years ago? Like, what did you see 7 years ago that led you to do this thing as crazy as start a business of one, like long before I think social and the internet kind of reached the scale of maturity that it's at now, where it's like it's so easy to do it that everybody's doing it. But back then when you did it, it was a very different place. So like, what was going on in your life and how did you make this transition to business of one?
My origin story is, it's really kind of my coming of age in business, so to say, where I graduated with the wrong degree.
Didn't we all?
Totally. Or maybe it was the right degree. I blatantly didn't show up to some job interviews. And I moved out of my house. I moved onto a bike. And I rode my bike down the west coast of the US with a trailer and a surfboard. And that was like my dream. That was the thing I wanted to do before I died, was teach myself how to surf and ride my bike 2,000 miles down the entire Pacific Coast Highway. Canada, Mexico, and this is on a pedal bike, like human powered. And I had a surfboard.
Like a road bike? Like a Lance Armstrong bike?
Yep, road bike. And I had a surfboard as a trailer attached behind me. And the surfboard was blank. It was like a billboard. And I wanted to send the universe this message to come back to me because all these cars were passing me. And so I decided to write on there, why do you exist? And it was this perfect like existential question for like 22-year-old me. I'm like, why do I exist? Like, what am I doing? I'm on a bike. I don't know. And so I was just meeting these like wonderful people. And they're like, I exist to teach. I'm a doctor. I exist for my kids. And I was shooting photos of these people. I was nearing the end and I was like, dude, this is a book. Like, you need to publish a book. Like, this is what you're going to do with your life, is something around books. And so I finished the ride and I reached out to some publishers. I got rejected. And I was like, well, you know what? Fuck y'all. I'm going to teach myself how to do it. And I'm going to do it myself. And I needed money, but I made this other decision to live in my car, essentially, to continue to work on publishing this book. And this was like a little bit of this like kind of dark time. I was trying to figure out how to generate an income, but I just knew that the book was like so important. And so I published my first book, Why Do You Exist? Cover shout out here. And I did a couple things. Like, I've always kind of just been doing it my own way. Like, I didn't put my name on the front cover because it's not about me. It's about why you exist. I didn't put the book on Amazon because I felt like the results I wanted weren't from Amazon. I sold it directly to my audience on Instagram, and I got email addresses. I got DMs, and I was like, what'd you think of it? And from this was like my first leads, like my very first leads. I was like, people were asking me, hey, could you help me publish a book? I love what you did. And so I just started saying yes to people. It was like poetry books, grandma's books, weddings books. Like, I just was like learning because I didn't know a whole ton about it. I was very much approaching it through self-taught. And I came to the point where I needed a job. And so I started working minimum wage as in a night shift in a snowboard factory. In this snowboard factory, I could listen to headphones, and like I was binging on like Tim Ferriss, like the 4 Hour Work Week. And I was trying to like put the pieces together to how I could like quit this minimum wage night shift job and like go all in on books. But I'll just kind of stop there because I think like that decision to do this bike trip really empowered me to like publish the first book, which I got my first set of leads. But then I was like, oh shit, what the fuck? How do I make money? And so I was like working some minimum wage job. And I don't know if that brings up anything for you that you want to pause on, but I could keep going.
Well, first of all, how long did it take you to ride 2,000 miles on a bike?
I did it 3 months.
So you lived on your bike for 3 months. You learned all this crazy stuff, and then you were like, this is a book. And like, whoa, you had this moment, you're like, this is a book. I got to write about this experience. How long did it take you to write the book after, or did you start writing it while you were on the trip? Like, when did you decide to write the book, and how long did it take you?
So I finished in 2017, and it actually took me like 18 months, like just under 2 years to like formally publish it. And so I was like living in my car. I was binging YouTube videos. I was asking professionals. I was learning InDesign. I was trying to figure out how to get it printed. I was trying to create my own strategy behind it. And so it took like over a year to do that in and of itself.
You figured out fulfillment and like printing and all that stuff to get the book into people's hands. Intentionally didn't put it on Amazon, and you sold it through Instagram.
Yeah, and my partner Gianna is an artist, and so she had this online store going. And at the time, my credit card was maxed out, and I put 20 books on my credit card, which is all the money I had. And I posted on my Instagram, and I sold all 20 books in like literally like 20 minutes. And I had all these DMs coming through, and I was out of stock. And I was like, dude, you're blowing this. And my girlfriend, Gianna, thank God, she was like, just say it's in stock and just tell people that you'll fulfill it in like 4 to 6 weeks. And so I opened it up. And then that same day, I mean, at this time, this was huge. Like I did like $2,700 in book sales in a day. And for like needing cash flow, that was seed money. And so just so much respect for Gianna. She was like, open it up. Like the energy's there. Like people aren't going to be excited in 6 weeks when it's back in stock. Just say you'll fulfill it then. And so I got that amount of money was like what I needed to then launch it. And then since from my book, like the amount of money it's gotten me from like clients is, it's hard to quantify that, but it's everything. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in client work from that book, hands down.
Instagram influencer book sales was like not where I expected this to go. So how did you even, I don't want to get stuck on this, but I'm just so curious. How did you get people on Instagram to buy a book? Were these friends? Was this family? Were these just strangers? How many, and then take me through like how you got these initial book sales, and then how many books have you sold? Like, did you sell at that time, and then kind of totally just to get an understanding as to what this
totally.
book
So when I was doing the bike ride, I was just writing and posting on Instagram daily, and I just cultivated this little like committed cult-like following to this 3-month adventure of this. Why do you this story?
They wanted to see it
exactly.
through.
And they wanted to see the ending of it. And so to this date, you know, I've probably sold like 700 books, but direct to an audience is a lot better because you have the ability to get email addresses. And I still use this stuff to this day. And then just direct sales is, hey, you can get like $25 a sale versus I'm getting the nuances, but that's a good profit margin for just like a simple product, for like a first launch for me, just trying to get some freaking seed money.
Yeah. Considering most people only make a few bucks on a book and you're making $25 a pop, that's not bad. Okay. So this is ridiculous. So you write the book, people start buying it. You're blown away by the fact that people care about this book. Then what happens?
I do a couple projects from that, and then leads dry up from the book. And I am like, what do I do? And again, shout out Gianna. She was like, have you heard of this platform called Upwork? And I had, and I was like, oh yeah, it's a freelance platform. It's incredibly commoditized. It's where you get cheap freelance work. But I was like desperate to get out of a minimum wage job. And so I started looking at it, and I was like, I just feel like people are using this wrong. And so what I did is I posted like my dream publishing job, which at the time was like, I was like $7,000 to do XYZ. So to be clear, I created a like fake client account, posted a fake Upwork job. I got all these freelancers bidding on this job. I took every single freelancer's portfolio and every single freelancer's kind of like look on Upwork, and I curated mine to be the best of the best. I then started massively applying at scale to Upwork. And I did in 1 quarter, probably like $30,000 in Upwork, just like hustling it out on Upwork. And what was cool about this is on one hand, these are low risk projects that I allowed me just to learn and make tons of mistakes. Like I just was like, I didn't know how to do some of the stuff, but I got the money and then I figured it out while doing it with the client. And I, again, was just getting more and more experience. And then funny enough, one day I was at the beach, Nick, and I got this invite to a job on Upwork, and something about it just looked different to me. And went to my car, I applied to the job, and it was the person on the other end of it was Katrina Bissau. And I know you know Katrina. Then I got on call with Max and Katrina, and that's how I did Max's first book, Agency Survival Guide. And so this like period of hustling on Upwork allowed me to get good. Like at this point, I was confident. I'd done it for a couple of years, like following the Why Do You Exist leads, hustling on Upwork. Then I got Max Trailer, and I worked on his book, Agency Survival Guide. And what was so fun about Max is like he actually listened to me. Like I feel like people send me their manuscripts, and I'm like, it's too long. No one's gonna read it. You need to cut out all the crap, make these short, punchy poems, and add some illustrations. And Max was like, done. Like, you're my guy. Let's do it. And so we published, Agency Survival Guide. And then at the end of Agency Survival Guide, he gets on a call with me, Nick, and he goes, what the fuck are you doing? He goes, you're not a book designer in Upwork. He's like, you're amazing. Like, why are you throwing yourself into this Upwork commodity zone? He's like, come to a call of mine. I'll help you. And Max literally like mentored me off of that platform. And I was ready at the time into sort of like where I then started actually building, I would say, like a legit, real consulting business. And I have so grateful for Max and what he's taught me.
I mean, I think it speaks to the work that you did. And I know you just recently helped Katrina publish her book, A Million Reasons Why You Can't. Is that
Correct.
Right? So, I mean, the fact that they're still publishing books with you says a lot. Because this was probably 5 years ago now that you did Agency Survival Guide?
Yeah, so 5 years later, I worked with Katrina on her book, which is super cool. All from a little like Upwork game job.
I have it. I haven't read it yet, but I do have it. So I'm excited to check out hers. I've read Max's. But anyway, so what I think is interesting is like these conversations that I have, there seems to be this like generally that there's like one person that for some reason saw the thing that we can't see in ourselves and was just like, let me help you. And it's like Max changed. It sounds like Max really changed your life, like, and just helped you see more of what you were capable of doing. So takes you through, helps drag you out of Fiverr or Upwork and gets you to set up shop as like a real, I say real, as a consultant, like a more formalized consulting service or productized service in that way. I'm like, this is like a movie right now. I need to know what happens next.
There's thinking and there's doing. And he's like, you need to stay as a publishing strategist in the thinking. And he's like, the thinking you told me to just have these short, pithy poems with illustrations, the thinking behind the cover concept that I came up with, and then the illustrator did the doing. But I was the one that was like, hey, this is what the cover is going to kind of look like. And so he was kind of teaching me the difference between that. And he's like, you just need to get really, really focused on what you do and what you don't do. And so like to this day, like someone the other day, a client was like, hey, could you help me design my logo? I love the illustration on page 26. And I was like, no, I don't do logo designs. And like all respect to people who do brand identity and all that. But like I stay specifically on like the publishing strategy. Like what's the concept of the cover? That's the hardest part. And then finding an illustrator just to make it, like that's easy. So what's like the concept of like the distribution strategy? I chose my book to not be on Amazon. Max gives his way for free on LinkedIn. Other books aren't even available for sale. They just get distributed behind the corporate model. So he just really was like, you need to stay in this thinking zone and stay really, really focused. And so I still designed things, but I only design covers. I only design interiors. I don't do anything else. And so he was like, okay, stay focused on what you're doing. You need to package up your service into like a product. And so I went from like 2,500 and I sold the same exact package for 7,000. Then I sold the same package for 7,500. Then I sold the exact same package for $10,000. And I was like, what is going on here? It's just mind blowing. And it was like,
It like rewires your brain when you're like, oh, I can just keep going.
I was like, oh my gosh. And then I got on this call and it was like a large campaign. And I got off of it and I was like, man, this is like a $20,000 project. And, you know, I called Max and I'm so grateful. And he's like, yeah, just say it's that much and tell him your terms. And I was like, I would need $20,000. I needed 100% up front. And if it goes over, then it sparks a monthly retainer. And the person on the call just didn't blink and they just said, send me the invoice. I was like, you know, I was like, okay, so this is how it goes. And one of my core beliefs, or I have this manifesto thing I've been working on, a solopreneur manifesto. But one of them in there is a proposal is simply an opportunity to fuck it up. That's all it is. That's all it is.
I like that.
And in this proposal, this particular client is like I was like, I have to be able to tell them what they get in just like 3 points in a casual conversation. You get Kory, the book guy, you get the publishing strategy, you get your book. And that's all that this person needed. And so it sucks when you get sent a proposal from someone and it's like some 20-page document with like 15,000 words and it's like incredibly complex. and so that's something that's important, is keep it simple. Conversations matter, and stay focused on like what I do and what I don't do. That really helped me pivot to like the next level of like having like a real consultancy, not like a freelance thing on Upwork.
So how did you find these first clients? Like now that you're out of Upwork and you're out of this, like the high that the initial book launch got you, where did you find these initial clients now that you're an established consultant?
Yeah, it's always been through showing up to just tons and tons of time on Zoom. So this started happening in 2020. And so 2020 was really well for me because a lot of people had nothing better to do than to write. COVID, like for some reason, 2020, 2021, people were like, this is the perfect time to write a book. Like there ain't shit happening. And so I just was like, I don't have anything specific, but it was just hours on Zoom, networking with people, talking to people, showing up to events, and just having these conversations. So I think that word conversations, I love it. Like that's what it's about. And it's not like selling. I'm not pitching anything. I'm not doing no pitch decks. I don't believe in pitch decks at all. It's just like, hey, like writing a book's hard. Do you want help? No? Cool. And talking to as many people as I could. And during this period, 2020, 2021, 2022, like I had so many yeses, and it was really just this like up growth for me.
You know, there's a thing that most solopreneurs I know struggle with, which is the thing that they do, they haven't necessarily done for themselves, or they've done it for companies but not for themselves. There's like always this like weird gray area, and they're trying to close this gap. And what I love about the way that you've built this thing is you were like, I had to figure out the hard way how to publish a book without a publishing house. And you learned a lot of different things about how to not publish a book. You learned all the dumb stuff and you're like, all right, never do that again. You optimize the process and you're like, okay, I got a book written, formatted, printed, and sold, and other people have it in their house. And then you're like, I can show someone else how to do it because I had to do it myself. That whole thing is where so many people, like the wheels fall off for them, because there's this is where imposter syndrome comes from. It's like they just haven't necessarily done the thing. Well, it's like, well, yeah, you can't necessarily do the thing because you're not the founder of like a tech company, but you've worked for tech companies, whatever, right? Like, I'm not to lose the plot here, but the whole idea is like, you took the thing that you figured out how to do and you realize there's a lot of other people out there who also are trying to figure out how to do that thing, and you were able to build a business from it, and you've continuously optimized that entire process.
I love that. Like, I've always just felt really like a little bit squirmish when I don't like really know something, or I haven't done it myself. I have to sort of touch it and get handsy and get over it and like understand it and have some form of results behind it. And I think I struggle with imposter syndrome, and like looking at my shelf. I won't show you for the fear of it, but over here is my trophy shelf, and there's like 105 books on my trophy shelf. They're all the books I've published in my life. And like looking out at that shelf on the hard days, it's like, oh, even if my mind is like, you haven't done it, it's like, oh, there's 105 books sitting on your shelf with results inside of them. And that really fuels me. That's what motivates me upon is seeing that.
105 books over the course of 7 years, like in the majority of which happened in the last 3 to 4.
Yeah.
At what point were you like, hey, this is actually going to work? like this business, like you were running this business, you probably published a book or two in the first couple of years, and you were like at what point were you like, this could actually work? This is a business.
I think there's a weird thing in entrepreneurs, and particular solopreneurs. Like, I've always known it was going to work, which is crazy. Like, when I was starting my business, my family, my friends, they were like, what are you doing? Books? It's 2018. Like, what is going on? And I love this. It's a quote, and there's actually a book titled this now, but I was kind of following this before the book came out. It's called Burn the Boats. And it's like this old metaphor where Hernan Cortez supposedly landed on an island to conquer the free world, and he got everyone off of his boats, and then he burnt the boats. And he was like, now there's only one option. We either like conquer the island, or we, die. And, not the biggest supporter of the horrific acts they did, but I love the metaphor. Like, I quit my job kind of to go back there. I worked a night shift job. I got my way into a nonprofit, and then I got my way into the university, and each one was a little bit of a pay raise and a little more stability. And then I had 6 months, like I was meticulous in my finances. Like, I had 6 months of a runway saved. And I was like, if I don't make a single dollar, I'll just get another job. And so I quit my job, I burnt the boats. And I had just this innate belief that like I was going to just figure it out. So I had some intention where I had a 6-month runway, but I also was at the time, 20, 25, no kids, no mortgage at this time. So like things were pretty low risk for me. And I've been doing it 7 years, but I think full-time, like 6, like full-time in and of itself. And that 6-month runway is just, it's still there. And like, there's been periods where it's gotten much, much longer, periods it's gotten a little bit shorter. But like, that's kind of been my mentality is like, I can always get another job, but my dream and what I'm trying to do is to build a job that I can't get fired from. This is the ultimate stability. This is the ultimate security is what I'm trying to build.
You and me both, brother. That's all of us. Was there ever a point when you did where you did apply for a job that you second guessed what you were doing? Yeah,
I love this question. So 2020, like I met Max, things were booming. I had this huge climb. 2021, 2022 was good. And then it was right around like that 5-year mark where I kind of had that feeling of like I made it a little bit, which is horrible. I don't know, for some reason, just check mark in your brain, the 5-year, whatever it is. And I let off the gas. And where I primarily let off was in sales and marketing. It's like not my favorite area, and my prospecting. I let off the gas, and shit got super real at the end of 2023 and at the start of this year. Start of this year was just crickets. So quiet and so confusing. And I've never gotten so many no's. I've never gotten so much resistance. I've never just gotten so many ghosts from people, and I'm not sure what's up with that. And so this year it was like, damn, I did dust off the resume, which was real. It was scary. And life has this crazy path where I actually went through this full job interview process and I didn't get it. And then the next week I closed the client and they paid 100% upfront. Like 4 days after I found out I didn't get the job. I actually got this tattooed on my wrist here. It says, love the process. It's like my life motto. It's like there is no finish line. And so even now, like there's no guarantee, like some work's coming in for me, but like I will never get confident like I did in the past, that little like 5-year mark. I will never get confident like that again. And like, that's so where I went wrong is I thought I had made it. Like I thought I had found that security and it just doesn't exist. Like the good work never stops and it's like never really there. And so I'm still actively just like, hey, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to make this work?
That's like a pretty common theme amongst a lot of people is letting off the sales and marketing, just overarching business development. Like things get good, your plate gets full, and then you don't necessarily have the space or whatever it is to try and continue starting new conversations. A couple projects come to a conclusion and then you're sitting there holding the back. It's a tough thing to balance because like there's how are you supposed to do it all? And I don't know if there's a perfect way to do it, but I think we've all learned that lesson. Like you're not alone in learning that lesson is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I think where I'm kind of going now, and I'll kind of reverse engineer like my most recent client, I reached out to someone maybe 6 months ago who is kind of a similar area of me, but doesn't do exactly what I do. And I was like, hey, like you don't do what I do. I don't do what you do, but we could like work together in XYZ manner. I didn't hear from them for 6 months. And then they just referred me this client. And that client came in and it was just smooth. When it goes smooth, it's amazing. You know, they had the exact problem that I solved and we get along great. And the timing and the budget was there and we're grinding on the book right now and it's coming along great. It's beautiful. And so I think those are really interesting to me is like reverse engineering it. It's like that 1 30-minute call I had 6 months ago led to $15,000 in revenue. That type of stuff is crazy to think. And so where I'm really going now is like the Jared Fuller Nearbound stuff. I really love that. It's like, how do I make strategic partnerships? How do I surround my people? How do I build this ecosystem of kind of prospecting? And I can get tons of people just coming in to my doorstep like that.
I don't think enough people are willing to accept that the work today creates results or will show up in your bank account in 6 months. We're all indoctrinated in like the loop must be closed. Like if I send the DM today, I'm going to get the deal like tomorrow. And it's just not how it works. Like the whole point is to build these relationships and to start conversations that just like the whole, there is no end game. This is the infinite game, right? It's like all of the work you put in today, like the goal is be in business long enough for them to send you a referral, be in business long enough for them to need when it is time, when the problem is big enough for them to need you type of thing. And that stuff tends to compound over the course of months in years. Cal Newport has a new book out, Slow Productivity, that I'm obsessed with this idea of, he talks about measure your success over the course of like years and decades, not necessarily weeks and months. And it reframes everything that you're doing because now it's not so much like, and I know you're in the process of writing your next book right now, or you're wrapping that process up. And I think it's like, it's easy to look at this and go, I didn't get my book done in like these like few months, but it's a lot harder to look at it and go, look at all of the books I've written over the course of years of this last decade. It changes your whole perspective.
Totally. Yeah. There's like that quote where it's, you overestimate the amount you can do in a day and underestimate the amount you can do in a year.
Yeah, exactly right. What's a moment or a decision that you made along the way that you feel impacted the direction of what you're building right now?
Where I want to go with this is intermixed in kind of my story. I didn't get super granular with it, but I made the decision to move to Port Angeles, Washington, this is where I live. And I made that decision like first and foremost. And why I made that decision first and foremost is because I like living in a small community. I love skiing, surfing, hiking, biking. These are the things that just fill me up. And so I was like, I want to live somewhere where these things I like to do are integrated into my day to day. I'm going to like build my life first. So on a Wednesday, I can go surf for a little bit, come back and work. I can go walk literally a mile and I can be at the beach. I can go ride my bike 5 miles and I'm up on a mountain. I can descend on the mountain. I can jump in a river. I can come home 20 miles later and I can eat dinner. And I think a lot of people are like, how do I get my job? How do I make the money? How do I do all these things? And so like, I was like, I'm going to choose where I want to live first. And then I'm going to figure out the money second. And so I'm just so happy that I made that decision to move here. And then all the dominoes just kind of started falling and I've like figured it out. My day-to-day life is a vacation, like in the stuff that I love to do. And I love tracking this, so I was looking at my stuff from last year. I'm a big like tracker. I got 247 days outside doing activities in 2023. So that's 102 days on my bike, 47 days surfing, 10 days skiing, 27 days running. Like these are the important metrics to me, so like along the way, like I'm just glad that I didn't move to somewhere where I couldn't do that stuff.
That is awesome. I feel like this is the measure of the success over the course of like years thing where you can look back and like, I spent a year of my life on my bike. Like in a few years from now, you said, like, you spent 100 something days on your bike in the last year. You'll be able to say, oh, like five full years of my life was spent on a bicycle. And if that's what you want, like that's the type of stuff that we should be tracking. Like that's the real KPI of business is like, how much does this support your life? Build a business that optimizes for your life, not the other way around.
Totally. Like I generally just stop thinking after like 3 or 4 p.m. Like I'm very much a morning person. It's like, I love this thing. I call it the AM focus, where I wake up every day and I immediately do the most important thing right off at like 6:30. So I work like 6:30 to 8:30 on the most important thing of the day right away. Like I'm literally in my pajamas, like doing the most important thing. Then the important part though, is I pause and I'll like shower, I'll go for a walk, I'll eat some breakfast, I'll like kind of do my calming routine. And then I come back and then I do more like, I don't know, less creative thinking stuff. And then I do a full on bender in meetings and then I stop work at 3. And so like, I love designing my life around that. That works for me. And I want to ask you this. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. So I track all my time in Toggle and I've never really worked like a corporate 9 to 5, just so to say, but I work like 25, 30 hours a week. But when I'm working, I'm like focused. Like my mentality is like, how do I get this done as fastly and as quality as efficiently so I can go do other shit that I care about, which I feel like is sometimes the opposite incentive of a 9 to 5. But my hours say I only work 25, 30 hours a week, but I'm like dialed in and I'm focused. Like I stop it when I go to the bathroom. I stop it when I eat. I stop it for these kind of little breaks. And I'm wondering like, when people say they work like 40, 50 hours and they're in the office, like are they actually focused for that long? Like is 25, 30 hours of focused work on my Toggle, is that representative of someone who's just kind of like twiddling their thumbs in the office? Like help me understand this a little bit. Do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the human brain is probably dialed in for about 3 to 4 hours of real work in any given day. So your 25, 30 hours is probably pretty accurate. You just don't have like water cooler to fill in the rest of the time. Like, you ever seen
Yeah,
Office
yeah, I have a
Space?
water cooler for sure.
That's basically, that's like real. Like, that's like what is happening in Office Space is actually what happens in most of a corporate jobs or any job. They're killing time. So, I mean, for people who work 60, 70 hours, I mean, who knows? I mean, I know a lot of solos who work those types of hours, but they have a boatload of client work that they do. Whereas in the corporate world, I don't know. I mean, I think they're working that much probably because they didn't spend the daytime
Yeah.
in the way they should. I don't know. This is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
broad brushstroke.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just to go back to that, like designing life, like I can't work 60 hours a week. Like I kind of wish I could because I'm that ambitious of a person, but like my brain, I literally can't do it. And so like part of it is like I've had to choose this path of a solopreneur. It kind of, not to sound super meta, like it chose me because I was like, I can't commute. I can't work 50, 60 hours a week. It's like my brain just like, it doesn't work for me.
I don't think people are getting good work at that many hours, though. Like I said, your brain can't really handle much of like a high intensity task, deep work, whatever you want to call it, for more than 3 to 4 hours a day. And everything else is like, especially when you count task switching and everything else that goes on in the day, things that break your focus, whether you're in the office or out of the office. So I don't think you're too far off. I think you just truncate it into like a shorter amount of time. People stretch it probably across, 10 hours a day, whereas you're like, I'm going to cram this into like 6 hours a day and be, or whatever it is, and be done with it. So where are you at right now? I think there's like, let's fast forward. Let's get to today. So, and I know you just did this like week long, I don't know what you wanted to like this like book sabbatical or something. And you took this time and you were like, I need to hammer out this book. You're like, I've been putting it off and I've been kind of dancing around it, trying to get things done here and there. Talk to me about how you took this time and wrote your book and kind of what's next for you on that front.
Yeah. So I do really well. And I think a lot of people do too, of course, with open space and like focused on one thing. Like task switching is really, really hard for me. And so
it's hard for everybody. Nobody's good at task switching. I don't care what everybody says, they're all lying. 100%. I'm pretty sure they're all lying.
Working at this book throughout kind of end of summer, into the fall. And so kind of to set the scene, I'm on draft 4 of a book. It's a 50,000 word manuscript. I'm determined to make it be the book on publishing books for experts and thought leaders. And it was just slow. And I was like, I keep mentioning Gianna because she's wonderful. She's my sounding board. She's also a solopreneur. She's an artist. And I was like confessing my angst about that I couldn't work on it enough and fast enough. And she's like, you just need to block off a week. And I was like, I can't, blah, 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 excuses. I got that client, my email, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, you own your business. Like, look out and block a week off. And I was like, okay, you're right. And I looked out, blocked off 7 full days out of office. People asked me what I was doing. I was like, I'm out of office. I'm out of service. And it was beautiful. People were like, okay, cool. And they just like respected that and just went quiet. And I'm like, perfect.
Yeah, your clients love to see you take time off. Like, people think this is like you own a business and therefore it's hard to take time off. I mean, like it is harder than it is if you work for somebody else, but your clients love to see you take time off. They're like, oh wow, you went, that's so great.
And so I blocked off 7 days. I told the people I needed to know. And then on day 1, and actually like I coach people on this, is I did something a little bit different. Is on the day 1, I cleaned my house. I vacuumed it. I did the dishes. I went to the grocery store. I got tons of food. I like got everything prepped, like all the little distractions that like kind of get you from home. Like I took my inbox and I like just plopped it up to my assistant and I just like removed a bunch of things. I set intention. That was day 1. And then day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I put in, it was like 38 focused hours at my book. And I rewrote the entire part 1. And the part 1 of my book is the most strategic. It's the most thinking. It's the thinking about, I call it the alignment phase. It's who's the book for? What's the book that the who cares about? What problem is it solving? Why should the who care in the first place? And then why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? It's the fuel for the fire. How are you going to approach the writing process? What bodes well for your personality? Are you a talker? Do you want to talk it out? Max talked out his books. Are you someone that can just sit down and pang out writing? Are you a great presenter? Do you have a podcast? Do you have a bunch of content that just needs to be filtered into a book? Like, how are you going to approach the writing process? When are you going to work on it? What is your schedule? What is realistic that you amount of time that you have for working on the book? Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? And then with who do you need to build your publishing team? And so this is the part one that I completely rewrote, is to the strategic way to approach actually like one, thinking about your book so it gets the results that you want. And everyone's results is a little bit different. It's designed in an intentional manner so that it pulls you in the direction that you want to go by solving your who specific problem. And then it actually gets done because you've approached it through a strategic way of writing it, and you know when you're going to actually like work on it. And so I rewrote that entire part in this week-long session. And what's so cool about this is one of the biggest reasons anyone should write a book is clarity. Is I have so much clarity around this now to just like talk about it in the podcast, to do whatever. And then I can lead with my book and like, hey, this is what my engagement looks like. It's detailed in part one. Part 2 and 3, I get very technical. It's kind of like a step-by-step guide. And then I have that in there just to be like, hey, this is what the journey is like. Like, this is how I know it. And then I'm using the book in the exact same manner that I coach my clients on, which is on integrating your book with your offer, aligning it with your business, credibility, and then getting more conversations. And so I think this concept of offer, credibility, and conversations relates to stability as a solopreneur. And so I made the intentional decision to write my book for a week to help with this goal of stability. And that's kind of where I'm going next is I want to launch this book. I want to relaunch a website. I want to launch a newsletter, and I want to like optimize my social or my customer facing areas. And then I have so much content I can roll out for my book. LinkedIn, videos, whatever, like I can just take this 50,000 words and just spit it out. And so that's what I'm working on right now. And that's where I'm going.
I like that you talk about like, it brings clarity. Like I'm a firm believer that clear writing is clear thinking. And I think the hardest part that most solopreneurs face is they don't know exactly what they think about certain things. This isn't like a knock. It just is what it is. There's so many conflicting inputs, and taking the time to hammer that stuff out is hard. And it's like, how do you decide what you think other than to create the forcing function of write it down?
Totally. So my book is, it's going to be titled Pressed. And I love that word pressed. It's like the printing presses of old. It's you have to lean into that pressed feeling. That feeling of pressure is how you make a good book. And so a book that's pressed is designed in a pursuit of unobstructed self-expression. It's around you. This creates originality because you're a unique lens of the world. But it needs to be designed for the user experience, what your who wants, the problem that your who has. We need to balance your expression and what your who wants, like we need to balance you with your who, because just because like I care about something, but it doesn't solve their problem, it's not gonna doesn't matter to them. So it has to be designed from you, but it needs to be reverse engineered around your who's problem. Then a book that's pressed is edited and it's tested. A lot of books are edited. They forget the testing. Can you send your book out to your ideal client and get feedback? Have you gone through the process like I have 105 times? And then the last point is synergy, is how do you have your book and your business all harmonious and flow together? And so it pulls you in the direction that you want your business to go. And these are the main points of my book that it took me months and years of writing to distill it into this one little organized flow that I just released on you.
Dude, I love that, because what I heard was that your book is not about you. Like, this isn't a biography. And this is probably something I would imagine is really hard for people who are writing a book that is not a biography, to not make it about them, to make it about the problem, and to make it about the reader. Because no one wants to read your biography. You're not Michael Jordan. Like, you're not interesting enough in that way for people who want to read your biography. But if you get the problem, and you can articulate it in a really clear way, boom, we got a good book.
Yeah, like,
you tried to get me to press one of my email course into a book. You're like, this is a book. And it's like, I don't think it's a book, man.
dude, it's totally a book. Totally a book.
Soon enough, there will be a book coming. I'm committing to that right here, right now. There will be a book. I don't know what specifically yet, but there will be a book, and you're going to publish it for me. Well, with me. Like, I'm going to hire you.
I love it. And that's the first thing.
Don't worry about
design for the user experience. What problem are you solving? And I know you're huge at that.
That's my thing. That's like, I will die on that hill. So looking back at all of the 7 years of craziness, what's something you would have done differently?
Ooh. Well, first, I love that the decisions I made me in who I am today. I think I would have hired an assistant way earlier. I think as a solopreneur, it's really hard to be like, I have enough consistent income, or I can do it all myself, or whatever self-limiting belief that you have. Like, I would have gotten an assistant earlier. Like, it's the best money I spend every single month just to take that low-hanging administrative task. And like, I track my time. So I went from doing like 30% administrative. Last quarter, I did 8% administrative work. Like, that is a huge, huge decrease in the percentage of my time. So I would have gotten an assistant earlier. I would have called and asked people for help more. And I want to do this into the future. It's amazing when I pick up the phone or I send an email and I ask someone for help. It just blows me away how people are willing to help. And so I think I would have hired an assistant. I would have asked for help earlier. And the final point is, I wish I could have just like worried a little less. Like, what we do and what I choose to do is stressful. It's uncertain. And so like, I deal with consistent low grade anxiety around it all. And I wish, looking back, I would have just worried less and enjoyed the journey a little bit more.
There's definitely something to be said for ask for what you want. That's like a recurring theme in almost all my conversations here, is that everyone wishes they would have done that more often. The assistant thing is interesting. I've heard a lot. I don't have one, but I feel like a lot of people bring it up. I feel like I should explore this because it seems like it's great.
It's wonderful. It's a game changer.
I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I hold to these tasks so close that I'm just like, it would be harder for me to explain to someone how to do it than to just do it myself. Like, that's the kind of person that I am with this stuff. And I don't know, maybe that's just like, I'm holding myself back.
And this is something that I love telling people about books, is like, just start recording your screen and just start like tracking your emails and just start being like a little bit better with I call it knowledge management. Like, you have a lot of digital sawdust that's left. You have a lot of like kind of things that you're outputting, is just being a little bit better organized with that. And so even things that you struggle to explain, just like record your screen and then just send it and just be like, hey, I need you to do this. And at first they got to learn it, but like, you can make standard operating procedures and all sorts of wonderful stuff just right off of screen recordings, and you don't even have to explain anything. That's something that has changed my life completely.
True. One of the things that was like very hard for me was to even offload the production of this show.
Oh yeah.
I produced the first 10 episodes of this show myself, and it shows. I mean, they were okay. I'm definitely not a great podcast producer, but I feel like I had to do it because, one, I had to learn how to be a better host and how to run the show, but also I had to value the process, because anyone I was going to send it to or choose to like trust to do that work, I wanted to really value that work and understand like it's not super easy. I mean, it might be easier for them because they do it professionally, but mastering the audio and taking out all the filler words and all the stuff makes it, and just cleaning it up. So yeah, I totally get that, but it was hard. It was like hard to explain like my creative process and my thinking and why I made certain creative decisions. So to try and do that for mundane tasks, I don't know. I've gone off the rails on this one, but I agree. I think it's something that probably more people should do because we all get bogged down with this stuff.
Finding the right people is huge. It took me a couple kind of different people and experiments and all that. And just like with you with the podcast is like having that faith and like release some of those things that like we all feel is like, if you have the right person on the other end, it makes it a lot easier. And it's hard to find the right fit.
Now that this book is coming out, what is next for you?
I feel like I've cracked this inner code a little bit on book writing, like the nitty-gritty book writing. And so I'm really excited to sort of pivot into authorship myself. Like to be clear, I've published 3 books. I'm working on my 4th. I've helped other people do it 100 times. And so I still want to help others do it. That's like the core way I make my income. But I'm really excited to sort of launch this book. This would be like my first really like full-length prescriptive nonfiction book. And how it's going to like impact my business. I know it's going to be big. And then I have like so many other books behind the scenes now from everything I've learned. And I want to set up this kind of operation of like churning out quality books from myself as an author. And I think that's kind of like the main next focus is just stability around my consultancy, having consistent, not so much feast or famine. And I'm looking forward to partnering with you on that and helping me through some of my own challenges there. And then building Kory the author and getting some of my own, consistent passive income and books and going from, 3 books to 4 to 5 to 6 and seeing where that takes me.
I feel like you are the man for the job, without a doubt. It is clear that this work is like crazy meaningful to you. I don't have the patience to probably sit around and help people and squeeze out these ideas from people and help get it all right. But if you can tell how meaningful it is for you to help people really like make their mark or like leave their legacy in these types of books that you're creating. I mean, 105 books is wild. And so I love what you're doing. I love that you've got almost pressed. When is that coming out, by the way?
Oh, that's the $1 million question. Oh gosh, no, it needs to get out like as soon as flipping possible. Like, let's say February of 25. Let's do this. I'm excited because a lot of people do print on demand. Long story short, I'm going to do mine like an offset print run, and it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be unlike any business book. And so I got to wait for books to get printed, but it's all go time for me. 2025 is going to be a sweet little rebrand for me.
Right on, man. I cannot wait to read it. Let me know when it goes live. I don't know if you're going to sell this one on Amazon, but I'm getting a copy. So I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on and sharing your story. It is a wild ride. Like quite literally. That was a pun I'm not proud of it. But yeah, man, thank you for coming on and sharing your story. It is, you've been at this a lot longer than a lot of people in the space right now. And I think there's always going to be like ups and downs to this entire thing, no matter how long you're at it. And it's just like, stay the course.
Stay the course.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks so much. I love what you're doing here. I love listening to the show. I love the routes idea. Actually, when you first came out, 1,000 Routes, I was like, damn, that's a good idea. I wish I had that idea. Like, I just love people's journeys. And so it's fun to listen to. Respect. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate that, man. I mean, you're kind of on like a similar thing. Like you could do the 1,000 books. Like you're telling 1,000 stories. I'm just doing it in a slightly, like I'm telling the story of their business, but you're telling a different story. You could do it. You don't just take it and go do it.
Love it. Love it.
I appreciate you, man. I'll talk to you soon. Hey, Nick again, and thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can sign up for the 1000 Routes newsletter, where I process the insights and stories you hear on this show into frameworks and lessons to help you build a new and different future for your own business. You can sign up at 1000routes.com or check the link in the show notes. What would be your last meal on earth?
I love brunch. And so I'm thinking like egg scramble with potatoes and pancakes and fruit, maple syrup, really good espresso with coconut milk. Like I love just that fatty, creamy coconut milk and espresso. That would be my last meal. And I'd love to have like my people around me. 11 o'clock on a Sunday, brunch vibe, you're hanging out, you got your people, just slow roast type of vibe. That would be my last meal.
I like it. When does breakfast become brunch? Is it just the time of day, or do you feel like there's like a specific food? Like I feel like an Eggs Benedict is like a brunch food to me. I don't know if I would eat it for breakfast. I mean, I probably would. I'd eat it whenever, but what's like the brunch food? I feel like it's like, is there mimosas? Are you drinking Bloody Marys? Like what's going on?
I think it's more so like kind of like the patience, like the slow roast. Like it almost doesn't matter the time, but it's kind of like, is it breakfast? Is it lunch? I don't know. We're kind of just hanging out. And I think that's what's important.
Like we've got nowhere to go and all day to get
Exactly.
there is basically the vibe is the brunch vibe. All right, I'm tracking. I'm down with that. I don't know. Everyone's like, let's do brunch. And I'm like, they're like, let's get, and then you eat pancakes. I'm like, isn't this just breakfast at lunchtime? But I guess that's like what brunch is. I don't know. Some people are like, no, brunch is like a specific type of food. It's breakfast with booze. I don't know. I mean, anything's possible.
Totally. And I think that's what's fun about it is you get to make it up. Like if you want some mimosas, that's amazing.
There are literally no rules.
Yeah. I think that's why I like it for sure. The openness.
It says a lot about, it's about a lot about you.